so-called Tivol. I'd die for that fire in bed. Manya swatted both of his hands with her fly swatter and ran off. He pursued her. "Wait, you have the job. You'll wash glasses, serve seltzer, maybe a little something to eat." Her reputation as a cook spread without her knowledge. For the soup she brought to the bakery in a lidded tin for her midday meal, for her stews, for the scraps of dough that she turned into what the Russians called pelmeni and the Jews kreplach, dumplings stuffed with chopped meat and onions. She prepared hot borscht with beef in winter, she or cold borscht in summer, chicken cooked with prunes or a tsimis with sweet potatoes, carrots, and prunes. Tivol decided to suppress his lust and opt for Manya's cooking. He was either a bigamist with 2 wives or unmarried with 2 mistresses. He persuaded Manya to cook 1 dish each night. In exchange, she could keep the tips and bring her son Jack with her. These last 2 concessions sealed the arrangement. Bertha, her baby sister, did not mind sleeping with their neighbor, Mrs. Molka, until Manya returned from her night job, but Jack let out such howls of despair that she brought him to her night work. In theory, Mrs. Molka took care of the 2 youngsters during the day. In fact, they drifted away from her and, regardless of the weather, spent whole days in the street, running between the pushcarts, gorging themselves on unwashed, soft fruit that fell from the carts, or trading the ends of bread from greenspans for thin slices of halva, or for ice scraped from huge blocks and doused with red sticky syrup. On hands and knees they combed the crowded streets for lost pennies, which they squandered on salted pretzels, pronounced pletzels, or a single baked chestnut that Jack divided scrupulously. Bertha proved to be an excellent student. Jack insisted that she drop both Russian and Yiddish and speak English only. Within 6 months, her past fell out of her head, and she became as Americanized as Jack, who had been born on Ludlow Street. Jack told time by glancing at the sky. Once it turned bluish-gray, a sign of dusk, he grabbed Bertha's hand and raced her back to Ludlow Street, up 4 flights of stairs to their 1-room flat that faced another dingy building. The room was dominated by 1 bed in which his father had died, and he, Manya, and Bertha now slept. A shaky wooden table and 3 straight-backed chairs, none matching, that came from a Hester Street pushcart. A 2-burner gas ring and a tiny cold-water sink completed the amenities. The first word Bertha had taught Jack was Siberia, the coldest area in Russia, a punishing ground for criminals. The children screamed, "Siberia!" as they entered the freezing apartment. Then Jack filled the dented tea kettle with water, lit the flame, and placed a basin and the cheap brown bar of kosher soap on the table. With the warm water he washed his hair first, stating as always, "I can't stand schmutz in my hair," and then scrubbed the rest of his body with a rag, making certain that his skinned knees and muddy feet bore no telltale signs of the street. Bertha's turn to wash came next. She protested that in Odessa she bathed her whole body only once during the entire winter. Shooting her a look of disdain mingled with pity, Jack retorted, "There are people right in this building who don't wash either. But we're not them. We're different." Meekly, Bertha complied. Decades later, she still remembered her first American lesson in Jack's dandyism. He soaked their soiled clothes in the sink, wrung them out as best he could, and hung them on the line outside the window. Sometimes the clothes from the day before had frozen solid and had to be thawed on the backs of the chairs. Jack changed into clean, unironed clothes and the hated shawl that his mother wrapped around his shoulders to protect his weak lungs. Doctors who practiced in the neighborhood prefaced every illness with the term weak. Weak eyes, ears, throat, heart, lungs, stomach, right down to the feet. The prospect of losing her child to the same illness that had killed her husband kept Manya in a constant state of anguish. She bundled Jack into bulky sweaters, festooned him with shawls fastened with a diaper pin, and at night covered him with the major share of the feather-filled blanket spread over the bed. Much as it embarrassed Jack to walk to Tivol's gaming room wrapped in a shawl,
to keep listening to this audiobook. I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.